All right. My co host is running late, so I'm just going to start it off for you guys. Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Minds Behind the Music. I am your host, LA. Um, what is up? Greg from Red Sings the Blues, man behind the mic. Today's topic is going to be an album review. We've never done this before on our show. This specific album review is a new album that came out last Friday. This album is Greta Van Fleet's new album, The Battle at Garden's Gate. Now, I've briefly talked about this Greta Van Fleet on the podcast before. I've referenced them a couple of times. I've talked about the whole, oh, everyone compares them to Led Zeppelin, this, that, and the third. Well, oh, they're a blatant Led Zeppelin ripoff. I wonder what artist they'll rip off next on their new album. Just all that stuff. But I honestly, from someone who's listened to Led Zeppelin or spent years listening to Led Zeppelin, I honestly like these guys, and I really think that they're starting to come to become their own, and their sound is definitely become their own. I think even from their first album up until now, they started really shaping their sound. I know From the Fires had people really iffy because it was a kind of hit and miss album. Some songs hit, some being a miss. There were a couple that I liked from the album, but there was definitely some Led Zeppelin, some Zeppelin references I've noticed there, like Highway Tune and Safari Song. They gave me some strong Zeppelin vibes. Um, I know Highway Tune is supposedly they supposedly took the riff from the Rover from Led Zeppelin from Physical Graffiti, and I know they were kind of under some hot water for that. But what is it? The Safari song I think was one of the first songs I've heard from Greta Van Fleet, and either ways, like even though it still had that Zeppelin sound, I ended up really enjoying that album. Or I ended up really enjoying that song, and there were a couple other songs that I really like. Let me just pull up From the Fires real quick. So I'll just have that real quick from the Fires. Uh, From the Fires had 8 songs: Safari Song, Edge of Darkness, Flower Power, which I liked. Edge of Darkness had a really cool riff. They had the cover of the Sam Cooke song, "A Change Is Gonna Come." It's not a bad cover. I wouldn't say it's as good as the original, but it's not a bad cover. Then there was Highway Tune, which uh, everyone had their panties in a bunch about it because it had a blatant Led Zeppelin sound. But I don't know. There's some things I really enjoyed about that. I really like its aggressive speed, like the energy that comes with it. And Meet on the Ledge, that's a Fairpoint Convention cover. I'm not very familiar with them. But onto, the album, the current album that I'm talking about, because I could go on talking about the rest of their discography. Um The Battle at Garden's Gate. Now, looking back to it, I remember when Greta Van's first album came out, The Anthem of the Peaceful Army. Um, when I first listened to that album, there was definitely some things that I think there were definitely a lot of great tunes on that. Some of them, I will admit, there were a couple weak songs there, but that could be said with a lot of other albums. Each album has its ups and downs. Um, that's when I think they truly started shaping their individual sound. Like Greta Van Fleet was being Greta Van Fleet and not Led Zeppelin or the Guess Who or Cactus or any of those bands from the 60s and 70s. And they had a lot of their really true like individual works. What was I going to say? Each of their songs, none of the songs off their first album were covers. The Battle at Garden's Gate, I think, is where they really started saying like, "Hey, let's see what we did wrong on our first album with the weaker tracks. Uh, let's like what we did with some of the weaker tracks. Like I know some of the names are a little bit forgettable. I would find, or some of the names I haven't. I just can never remember. Uh, the Cold Wind, I don't remember that one too well. It's not a bad tune, not one of my favorites. I would have to say that Age of Man was probably my favorite song off that album, either Age of Man or um, the Brave New World. That was a good one, and they had an acoustic song off of that where I believe their bass player, similar to John Paul Jones, played on the organ called "You're the One," which I think those were really strong instances of their, of their sound. But the Battle at Garden's Gate really showed me how they could experiment even more with their songwriting and their sound. They're like, yeah, we did this. Let's say we did this on Anthem of the Peaceful Army, but let's try this on our next album. Let's see how we can really mess around with the soundscapes and just the overall atmosphere. And I could even say production wise with the Battle at Gardens Gate, everything is where it needs to be. I would say, um, when it comes to each instrument sounds, I would say I would like the bass to have been turned up a little bit, but maybe it's because I was listening to it in my car, and maybe I felt like, and maybe it might have been the time and place for that, might have been the volume, who knows? But I think production wise, everything was where it needed to be. I liked hearing that like room reverb that the drums had in a couple of songs. I think I noticed it in Caravel and Light My Love. I noticed a really strong drum reverb on that, which really made it sound more powerful, made the drums stand out even more. And I think that's really when you have strong drums on an album, it's always a good time. And I think this is definitely a perfect example. There are even a couple songs that I haven't mentioned that really experiment with the soundscape. I think Heat Above is one of those songs where they experiment with the soundscape. I think that was one of the first singles that they released before the album's actual release. And I remember I was listening to it when I first listened to Heat Above. I was like, this is definitely like it's different from how they sound. It's different but similar. It's different from how it sounds in on their first album. Like I would not have heard a song like this on off of their first album where they're where it's like where they're like giving more where they're giving more focus on just like each individual instrument that's being played, like the organ, the vocals, sometimes the guitars and the drums. I would say like I know with Heat Above it had more of the vocal and keyboard focus with the organ, but I think that I would say bravo to them for trying to do something different with their sound and that with the with Heat Above, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the single, but I think in the chorus it goes the "Can you feel my love?" Like it's just so spacey, so arena like. I all I have to say is when concerts start coming back in my area, these guys are probably gonna be the first that I see live, and I hope they play Heat Above because I'm uh so great. What's another one? My Way Soon. I love the riff off of My Way Soon. I think it has a it's more guitar savvy, but it really is like a strong like rock tune that like you I probably would not have heard say in modern music now because when you think about it, like a band like Greta Van Fleet is this is a band that you have to really look into and listen. Like you really got to do your research and look into. Same with Wolf Mother and the music of Gary Clark Jr. Mason,
Hello.
uh,
Sorry
just, we're
for
just
being
getting
late.
warmed up. That's what Al Pacino would say.
Ah, yes.
Um, I was talking before about the opener, the Heat Above, and I was saying that it really does something different than what they would have done on their first album. And I was saying that their first like when it came to all instruments, like there was a main it tended to have like more space in between, like just give more breathing room with every instrument playing currently. Like at the end where it has that like vocal part that like during that part, and it's just like I would not have expected Greta Van Fleet to have like something of that stature where it's just like it focuses more on the space rather than like, oh, how can we make this instrument sound cool with a solo? How can we make it sound how can we groove? Like it just kind of like goes with the flow. And that's something that's really starting to be more noticeable in Greta Van Fleet's music. Well, what do you think of that?
Um, I think generally the whole album is kind of like that. Like I think like okay, yeah, I was really surprised because like you saw them kind of do this thing where they would you didn't see it in any of the studio releases, but like live, they would
Mhm,
do like these improv sessions on like I don't know, every other song that would drag out like 10 minutes. And they got really weird and out there with it sometimes. And I don't know if any of that was like uh like practice beforehand, but I don't think that it
mhm,
was. So I knew that they had that in them. Um but it was really nice to see them try and capture that in a studio effort. Not that it was even particularly like jammy. Like they weren't being a jam band. Like they were doing atmospheric sounds throughout the whole album. Um,
mhm.
I think the fact that they did that on the opener, especially like they have that little opening,
Yeah, the organ.
uh, yeah, and then at the ending again. I mean, I I don't know. I wasn't expecting that at all. I was expecting an album of like 5 minute rock and pop songs, and they had a couple of those, but no, no, this was different. I was really surprised.
Yeah, I think the contrast the between their first album to this album definitely is, their focus. And their focus was more so on like the atmospheric sound rather than like, oh, how many crowd pleasers can we write? How many like poppy rock tunes, folkier tunes? Like they didn't focus on, how many arena savvy songs they can write. They focus more on like, what kind of songs can we write that feels good to us and feels good to the listener rather than, oh, could we play this song live? Not
Yeah, I don't know how much I would want to see some of those be performed live because I don't think that you can. You know what I
mm,
mean? Uh, what's the last one?
the last
Uh,
song.
yeah, the last one. Hold on. It's The Weight of Dreams. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know if I would want to see that one be performed live or what's the other one? Hold on. Yes, yes, I'm looking on Spotify because I don't remember all the titles yet.
Stardust Chords.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I liked it though. Um,
Mm,
The Barbarian, that was good, and so was I don't know how the hell they came up with this title. Trip the Light Fantastic.
yeah. I I could I would have to disagree with you on the Weight of Dreams. I could definitely see them playing that live. And I feel like instead of it being like 8 almost 9 minutes, I have a feeling that they're going to like extend it to like 10, 11 minutes long like with a solo, and I feel like they will just break out into a jam.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah, no, you got a point. Good point.
this
Uh, huh.
and I was saying that once, concerts like officially start reopening and they announce their tours and where they're going to perform, I want to see them live first because I remember I wanted to see them live in 2019 back in the day, but what is it? If they start, honestly, even whenever they start touring again, know that I want to see them live. Like that's
Uh,
probably the first band I want to see in concert.
oh yeah, for sure. I am. I'm going to see him.
Yeah.
That's happening.
What's I gonna say? I could even say that a lot of their riffs in this album were way more memorable than they were in than their previous album, which was the Anthem of the Peaceful Army.
Yeah, Anthem of the Peaceful Army was kind of like a. All right, their EP from the Fires was like. I mean, it was all like 5 4 minute rock songs, you know, and that
Mm,
was cool. And every song on that album, I remember, or well, EP, I remember. Um,
mm.
uh, my favorite has to be "Talk on the Street." That's just a little killer tune.
My
Um,
favorite is Safari song.
yeah. Well, that's the yeah. Um,
Yeah, the oh people, would you walk that way?
uh, I've been telling people this for years. You know that little part in that song where they do that little psychedelic break, and what's his face, the singer? I forget his name. Um,
Josh Kiska.
there you go. Uh, when he does, he kind of like howls or something. Um, if you didn't tell me I I know it's like the thing, but if you didn't tell me that that little bit where they go like psychedelic in that song for like 30 seconds, if you didn't tell me that that wasn't Led Zeppelin, I would have thought that was Led Zeppelin. I mean, I'm just being frank. I mean, come on, that is like some like no quarter crap right there. All right.
Yeah, and I was
um.
talking about this before you got on. Oh, what were you gonna say? Oh, drinking water. You drinking your water?
Oh yeah. A whole gallon. I took your advice. Um.
I still got my
Uh.
water bottle from work.
Um. But Anthem of the Peaceful Army didn't like hit. Like it had a couple good tunes,
Hmm.
but it didn't really. I don't know. It definitely I did not enjoy it as much as their latest endeavor here.
Yeah, I I would have to agree with you on that, mostly because like I like, and don't get me wrong, like I do agree, like Anthem of the Peaceful Army had some great tunes on it, but there weren't the riffs didn't like stick with me as well as this current album. Like the only ones that I could think of are When the Curtain Falls, Lover Lever, and Age of Man. Those are the only
Mm.
ones that I could immediately think of, and I guess you're the one that the acoustic song that has the organ and all that. But other than that, like the rest of the album, I would say like it's, and not to say that these songs are bad. It's just like I don't find the riffs to be as memorable as say this album in particular.
There was one on there in specific, on Anthem of the Peaceful Army that I dug to no end, and uh crap, what was it? It was my favorite one from the album. Uh, Brave New World.
Mm,
That
forgot about that
reminded
one.
me. That song seems more like what this whole album is. Brave New World. Like
Hmm.
it was dark and had like it wasn't quite there yet, you know, but it had its theme, and that song really is more akin. If I had to pick anyone off of their last album, that'd be like, yeah, I see why they're going to this one, or where they like progressed. I would actually think that it would be Brave. You know what I mean? Besides their like uh, pop songs that are on the album, which is like one, My Way Soon. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I would definitely have to agree. I think, and to even to summarize the rest of that album, like a lot of the album had a much darker sound, a much more like notable dark sound where it was like the riffs were almost approaching like heavy metal territory, where you could say. But I like there's like what is it I gotta pull up the names because it's another big one from the album, and it's one of the singles. Age of Machine. That um what is it? Age of Machine. That intro riff. That do 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 do.
Yeah,
Like it still sticks in my head to this day.
that's
And
the. I don't think I had heard My Way Soon. Did that come out last summer?
um no, Age of Machine came out in
In December.
yeah, December.
But My
And
Way Soon, did that come out in summer?
no, it came out October.
Okay. I don't think I heard My Way Soon first. I think I heard Age of Machine first,
Mm,
and then I heard My Way Soon. Um, and at first or no, no, yeah. At first I didn't like Age of Machine all that much. Like
mm,
I didn't like it at first, but the more that I've listened to it, it's grown on me quite a bit. Oh, by the way, Nick's here.
yeah, I see. What's up, Nick Riccardi? Thank you for coming on. We're just talking about Greta Van Fleet's new album. And if you have not listened to it, we definitely recommend you listen to it.
Listen to it right
Mhm.
now.
I
Wait,
know a
no,
lot of
no, not right now. After you listen to the podcast.
yeah, yeah. What he said. Um, I and I don't know what. There's always something that I've noticed, like, because I've been getting a lot of their ads on social media and on Facebook. A lot of these people are still commenting, "Oh, the best Led Zeppelin cover band ever! Oh, Led Zeppelin ripoff! Led Zeppelin! Led Zeppelin! Led Zeppelin!" Like it's
At
over and
first,
over.
sure, but
Yeah, at first
no, not anymore. They're evolving. I was hoping for that. I was waiting for that. I
I
knew it
saw it
because,
coming.
like, yeah, because even Zeppelin, right? They had one, and in some aspects two, where they were like, they hell, they were copying people, and then
Yeah.
Zeppelin 3 came out, and it was like, all right, okay, all right, and then 4, and that's like the Zeppelin album. So it's like I was waiting for it. Like I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, whatever they're doing in the future, I know it's not going to sound like this.
Mhm.
That's why I like them, because I know that they're going to evolve.
Yeah, like when a band starts out, like it's always going to have its like influences weighing on its shoulder. And I know that people were saying that, Greta Van Fleet wasn't, oh, they're not acknowledging that they were influenced by Zeppelin or something like that, or they or not acknowledging that they have Led Zeppelin style or something like that,
They don't
which is
even
under
have to acknowledge it. It's all over their first EP.
yeah,
Like,
like it's obviously there, and they actually have covered Zeppelin's tunes. Like there's videos of them on YouTube. I think they've covered a whole lot of love, and I think they've covered the ocean a couple of times. And
but who hasn't? Like,
yeah,
what band doesn't want to cover a Zeppelin tune? A rock band.
hmm Led Zeppelin is Led Zeppelin is one of the most influential rock bands to ever be like ever come to be. Like they, besides the Who, Led Zeppelin is the one that kind of popularized the whole like four members: the vocalist, the guitarist, the bassist, and the drummer. They really popularized that. I mean, like I said, besides the Who, who's notable for that, Led Zeppelin kind of was in their own realm. I think they were more in the hard rock realm, while the Who was just more rock. And
Well, even like the whole hard rock thing. I mean, there are music critics from like 1969 and 1970, and even dipping into 71, um, who would review their albums and call it heavy metal. Could you believe that? Yeah, like
I don't even think
you know,
Zeppelin themselves would call them heavy metal or call themselves heavy metal.
but at the time, I mean, what do you got? You got Cream. You got Jimi
Mhm.
Hendrix. You got the whole flower power thing. All right, Led Zeppelin playing blues licks that are definitely harder than Cream. You know,
Yeah.
and
And
hell, even Cream came out with Disraeli Gears, and that's like the psychedelic album.
exactly. And one of their most notable songs, I think, from Wheels of Fire, Crossroads, isn't even a song of theirs. It's a blues standard that was written by Robert Johnson.
Hmm.
And you got to take certain things to account, like when it comes to Greta Van Fleet, like yeah, they sounded like Zeppelin in the beginning, but you can't just go and say like, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to them. They sound like Led Zeppelin on this EP." And it's like you haven't, that tells me that you really haven't taken time to listen to them. Like, yeah, I get that like during their first like during their EP, their first like their debut EP, they sounded too much like Led Zeppelin. Um it's like, or when you tell me the band is just a Led Zeppelin ripoff, all that tells me is, oh, you listen to, say, these sets of songs, probably from the Fires, and then you said, okay, they sound like Led Zeppelin. I don't want to listen to them, and that's it.
Yeah.
What did Nick Riccardi say? Whenever
Oh man,
someone
playing
tells me,
Cannibal Corpse.
whenever someone tells me that the usual '70s bands like Black Sabbath and so on is heavy, I just play Suicide Silence to that person. Um, when you like here's what I have to say about that. I would consider Black Sabbath to be heavy, not because, of like, oh, they're the first band to call themselves heavy metal. They were like the biggest thing there, like they're so heavy. No. You have to take to account the music they were making during the time period. Like, keep in mind, like Black Sabbath was coming up with all these like really super distorted riffs and all these darker themes in music in the early '70s. Not a lot of bands out there touched upon these themes, touched upon these like morbid, uh, controversial themes that Black Sabbath was touching upon, like Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the album by Black Sabbath from Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, which came out in '73.
It came out in
I think that,
73?
yeah, '73, I believe. Let me look
I
that
thought it
up.
was 75.
No, I think
Oh.
Sabotage came out in '75. Let me see.
Oh, it was Sabotage, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath came out in '73, December of
Yeah.
1973.
Okay.
In America, I
Oh,
think it
dude,
came out in
heavy modern
'74.
heavy metal isn't even like it's not even like metal. It's like it's kind of like you know what? Yeah, it's just gent. It's just drop tune and gent. Which there are
Yeah,
some
that's what.
good, lot of good modern metal songs, but a lot of the stuff that like is thrust into the forefront of like
Mhm. Well, like,
uh
oh, you don't know what heavy is until you listen to Slayer or Cannibal Corpse or Suicide Silence or Whitechapel, where it's like. And sorry to cut you off there, I think, but to what I was saying about Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the main song, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and that main riff, the one that goes,
yeah.
I think that's really heavy. Like, when you really take to account that song, like I said, that song, let me see when approximately that song came out. It came out December 1st, 1973. To have like a really like hard hitting, gritty riff like that come out in 1973, to have that sound,
Mm.
that's heavy. I think that's heavy. Like 1973, like Elvis Presley was like the second heaviest band then.
Metal metal now is like no man, it's almost like it's cleaned up, but to the
Mhm.
point of being like mostly emo. You know what I mean? Like it's it's not it's almost like metal and emo have kind of like joined forces in some way. you know,
Mhm.
like it's I feel like there's not as much shock factor in it
Mhm.
now as there would have been, like Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin. Um,
Yeah. I think that I don't think it's metal and emo coming together. It's metal and punk music coming together, which I think is what the modern rock sound is. It's just punk.
mm,
Like it has that punk sound rather than that blues sound. And this is not me trying to rip on punk and say like, "Oh, punk is bad. Punk you don't need talent to play punk." It's just like this is the sound it is now, and for a band like Greta Van Fleet to be out there playing the music that they do is unusual because like for the past like 20 years you don't really see much blues influence. You haven't seen much blues influence in the modern rock scene.
I you know what bothers me and what makes me happy at the same time? Um, well, all right, let's start with what bothers me. What bothers me is that a lot of the rock stuff that comes out that isn't like what would be like metal, right? All the rock all the rock songs,
Mhm.
I can't pinpoint any, but just like any rock song you might hear, like, oh, this band just released this new rock song. All right, let's take a listen. It almost sounds like it's taken on this like country sound. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's always a lot of acoustic guitar, and there's always a lot of reverb. That's very reminiscent of Stadium Country. It always follows this same kind of form. Um, there's always some sort of choir going on in the chorus. There's always a lot of empty space happening, and there's always a very um a very stereotypical drum beat that's going on that's nothing special. Sometimes it's special, most of the time it's not. Um, where it's almost like, oh yeah, yeah, Pickleback is a good example. Or there's an Pickleback.
How the hell we wind up like this?
Yeah, no, genuinely, it might have started with Nickelback.
It
Um,
might have actually. Yeah.
and it's
Or
all
Three Doors
based
Down,
around
they have a
this
similar sound too.
it's all based around this riff that's very yeah, all these songs are glued together by this very almost like it's trying to be heavy, but it's not really heavy, and it just kind of sounds cringe kind of riff that centers around all of these songs. And that's pretty much every modern rock song that isn't like new metal or Five Finger Death Punch, right? So to now what makes me happy, which is my point, the fact that uh Greta Van Fleet is doing something that is not that does not sound like riffed up Stadium
Mhm.
Country or
And it's not
yeah.
being overly formulaic like a lot of other big rock bands.
And there's nothing wrong with being a little bit formulaic. It sells songs and it makes for good listening. It's
Mhm.
okay. But that's every single rock song that isn't new metal today. So the
Mhm.
fact that they are doing something that's like way out, for today's standards out there, like that is out there. I really like it. Like
Yeah.
that's what's drawing me to them.
And I think what
Sorry, I
you
took a long
say,
time to make my point.
nah, you're fine. Um, I think that you sum that up better than a lot of the boomers and a lot of those people that say like, well, I like it better than all they at least they play real music and not what's on the Billboard charts. That's all this crap that you hear every
They had a
day.
single
Like,
on the Billboard. So Rip
yeah,
Boomer, right?
rip a boomer. That's it's like eh, I I don't know. I'm just so tired of hearing people say, "Well, I you at least this is a band that plays real music and not rap and electronic music." It's like, shut up, shut the hell up.
Ooh,
First of all,
nobody
rap
gives a shit.
it's that's all I gotta say to that is because people, again, like I don't want to go off on a tangent saying like, oh, boomers this, boomers that, and people saying like, oh, but at the same time, it's like, look at what they listen to. They just listen to the same basic rock bands that, everyone would expect people to listen to. And they haven't really like, I mean, it's cool that you're it's a Greta Van Fleet and you're listening to their music because I love their new album. I think there's some great tunes off that. And but like using it as an excuse to insult like the pop music and the rap music that goes on the Billboard Hot 100s, it's counterintuitive.
Pickleback.
Yeah. What were you gonna say about rap though, Mason?
Pickleback. Uh, no. Uh, no. The people who the people who smear rap and electronic music don't know what they're talking about. There is a lot of good rap. There is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good electronic music. And the fact that you're not giving it the time of day just because you saw Led Zeppelin once in 1969
Mm-hmm.
is is really screwed up because
Or
I mean, come on, you know, different forms of music, different forms of musical pleasure, I suppose. Um,
yeah. And
it,
again,
hell, even mumble rap has its like shining moments. You know, like there's some good mumble rap. You know,
yeah,
and I would be probably the last person you would expect to
to
say
be
that,
saying that.
but
Bec-
there is.
Yeah, and the thing is, I get that you're not probably not gonna like that. You're not gonna like that certain genre of music. You're not gonna like the pop that's on the Billboard Hot 100s because it's not. It doesn't gravitate towards you. Pop punk doesn't gravitate towards me, but I find music. I take a deep look and find music that I like that's out now, and this album is one of those types of music. Like I like I'm really happy to see a rock band have that blues influence and have that almost classic rock sound while incorporating a newer element to a newer audience, a brand new audience, and to have specifically to Gen Z. And I think that's really, really the crowning achievement of Greta Van Fleet. Like, yeah, I get that, a lot of boomers are going to be happy and saying, like, yeah, this is real music and all this other stuff. But when you take to account of it, anything could be considered real music when you listen to it. I consider Greta Van Fleet to be real music. I consider the music on the Billboard Hot 100s to be real music. I'm let's even you said that Greta Van Fleet actually did make it to the charts one time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is for when the curtain falls.
Oh, when
I'm
the curtain falls. Yeah.
I'm very sure that it was when the curtain falls.
Yeah, because I remember hearing that on the radio, and I remember like all the big talk shows and all that. Since were all the big talk shows were talking about it and saying like, "Oh, this is the
Oh yeah, they were collectively nutting their pants.
the U.S.
Hell, they
hot rock and
performed on
alternative."
us Saturday Night Live. I remember
Yeah,
the night that happened. I
I
had
remember the night that happened too.
I had everybody over for a party, and then it got boring, and everybody went home. And then I decided, well, okay. And then sat up till 2 a.m. watching Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah, the U.S. rock airplay Billboard charts. That's rock and alternative songs, and this is for an audience. Um, this is more for the audience. Like Red Van Fleet was more for the audience that didn't want to listen to pop music. I'm not suggesting you shit on it, but it's just not everyone's going to be into that Billboard Hot 100 music or music that people would you would expect to listen to. Um, this was a nice change of pace, and I can't wait to see how this album does critically and commercially. Actually, here we go. I actually have the scores for the Battle at Garden's Gate if you want to hear. Okay, so Metacritic gave it a 64 out of 100. Um, All Music gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Classic Rock gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Consequence of Sound gave it a B, not too shabby. Exclaim gave it a 7 out of 10. Again, not too shabby. Kerrang, 4 out of 5. Pop Matters, 3 out of 10. Rolling Stone, 3 out of 5. Sputnik Music, 4.0 out of 5. So it seems like the reviews were like mostly mixed to positive. And I mean, that's I see that as an absolute win for Greta Van Fleet because
I see this as an absolute win.
yeah. Um,
It's a
what
good
else
album.
would yeah, I think I would say it's a really good album. Um, let's really backtrack to the album itself. What are the highlights of the album that you would say like particular songs that you would say really stood out to you?
So I'd have to say that something that I noticed even while we were talking. The only like single material on this album is My Way Soon. And I feel
Mhm.
like they were just like they put that in there because they were just like, well, we need something that these like somebody that can't put up with the rest of this stuff wants to listen to. So I feel like that's probably the only reason that song is on that album because it does not
Yeah.
fit with anything else on the album.
Mhm.
Let's let's be honest.
I would
Uh
say lengthwise, yes. Lengthwise, that would probably be single material. I think they released a couple other actual singles that weren't classified as single material, at least to most of the listeners. But I would say that one's the true single material song. What else were you
yeah.
gonna say?
Um I really like the Barbarians.
I
That
love that song.
that really got to me. Um Built by Nations was really cool. I'm forgetting. There's one part in that song, but I'm not gonna waste time trying to remember it. Um uh what else? Caravel. That into I think what was it? Was it
Let me see.
wait, no, was it the
Caravel.
Barbarians or Trip the Light Fantastic that had the Mellotron intro? Or was it both of them?
It might have been Trip the Light Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was listening to that, I gave it another listen today. Um, when I was listening to that, I thought those three songs went into each other. Like maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. Um, but I thought that Caravel, Barbarians, and Fantastic all went into each other. Like I thought it was like a little medley.
Mhm.
Because I think they all have Mellotron at some point. I know definitely the Barbarians does, and Triple Light Fantastic does. They both have little Mellotron bits. Um,
Yeah. I think that what do you call it? Samuel Kiska, the bassist Sam Kiska. I think he was the one that played all the keyboards,
mm,
similar to John Paul Jones, which
mm,
again is it's obvious that Sam is a John Paul Jones fan. What I gotta say, like
um,
he really figured out a way to properly incorporate that influence. Um, it didn't sound exactly like something. It sounded almost like something John Paul Jones would do, but at the same time, it's kind of like fits the Greta Van Fleet sound.
oh, dude, the bass playing was fantastic on this album.
I have to agree. Um, I have nothing but respect for Sam Kiska. He's a phenomenal player. I think he's great, but I feel like compared to the last album, he really stood out a lot more. Like I don't think that he had a like I can't really recall any bass lines of his off of Anthem of the Peaceful Army that really stood out to me. I'm not to say that, was bad on that album. He was great. I think
No, he had
every
pretty
every
good melodic moments.
Oh yeah, like he has excellent melodic bass playing. Like the song Safari song in the chorus,
Mm,
like that's a perfect example of his melodic bass playing. A lot of the songs off of here, "My Way Soon" has a really groovy bass line, I would have to say, and I I'm very impressed with his work, with Sam's work on this album. I think that, he is definitely a bass player with a lot of, promising potential and a lot of strong technique. Like I think that's definitely going to go places.
Oh, he's got chops.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that the rest of them really evolved, like musically. Their guitar
Mhm.
player, Jake, um, my good God, I mean, he got better. He got way better. Um, like their first album, it was like, all right, there were some guitar solos on there. It was good. It just wasn't. I'm viewing their first album comparatively to this one, and I feel like that's unfair. So let me try again. Um, their first album, he played a lot of good guitar solos.
Mhm.
Uh, they were very characteristic um, of how a guitar solo would go. Um,
Yeah.
a very formulaic idea of you go up, you have a moment, and then you go back down. That's pretty much a guitar solo, more or less, in a nutshell. For those not, no, that's pretty much a guitar solo or any solo for that matter in a nutshell. Um,
Mhm. That's a pretty much a perfect examples of those kinds of guitar solos is bands like the Cars and Bad Company, where
mm,
they literally their types of guitar solos are for radio play. Like
yeah,
that's that's pretty much how most people would look at a guitar solo. It's like you go up to the higher notes and then you go back down once the solo's over, like you just said.
yeah. You go up, have a shining moment, you make a statement, and then you reel it back in. And he followed that very well on their first album. But you
Mhm.
could tell that that's what, or at least to someone like me who's a guitarist and a musician, I could tell that that's what he was doing. I could listening to it, I can almost go like, okay, I know exactly why he did that, and it makes sense why he did that, and that's probably what I would have done. Um, but this album, he whew, uh,
Mhm.
it doesn't follow that formula, and it tripped me up a bit because I was expecting that. I was expecting that almost kind of formulaic, um, melodic passage that he and I mean, come on, thousands of other guitarists have laid down on albums. He didn't do that. Besides, oh, was there a guitar solo on My Way Soon? I think there was right at the
I'm
end.
pretty sure there was, yeah. Yeah. Yes, at the
Yeah, it was
end.
at the end. He followed that formula a little bit in My Way Soon. I could hear it,
Mhm.
just by nature of it being the single pop song, you know, or a single and a pop song. But every other song tripped me up a little bit because I was like, all right, I know when he's going to lay down a solo, he's going to do that little melodic thing. And he didn't do that. It was way more jammy and atmospheric. Um,
Mhm.
he was almost a little less busy, if you want to put it that way. Um, he almost reeled himself in a bit, and when it came time for a statement to be made, he said it very well, and then brought it back into like atmosphere instead of just formulaic. You know
Mhm.
that's something. I mean, all of them have evolved to something special of a musician. Even the drummer, hell, the drummer used to suck. If I'm being honest,
Mhm.
not anymore. I am
I
surprised.
yeah, I to go off from what you were saying, I think everyone has improved technique wise and just overall sound wise. Like I like what I think I like what he was doing in Heat Above, with that mix of the electric and acoustic. Like it just
Mm.
sounded. I think what he was playing, what Jake Kiska was playing on Heat Above, just fit the song perfectly. Like the way that both the acoustic and the electric guitars were complementing each other. And I have to agree. I think since his debut EP, since the debut EP, or since the EPs that Greta Van Fleet released, um, uh, I believe his name's Danny Wagner. Let me see the drummer. The
Yeah, it's
drummer's name
Danny
is Danny.
Wagner.
Yeah, Danny Wagner. His playing on this album, whoo, that his playing improved so much. I like
Oh yeah.
he has more like he doesn't sound stiff when he's playing it. Like he sounds like he's feeling what he's playing, and it's just like it's coming to him naturally, and it's just
Mm.
I'm here for it. That's all I have to say. I'm here for it, and I love seeing bands grow. I love seeing bands get better and better as they release new music and as they perform. It's a beautiful thing to see. Um, for example, another another example of like a musician who to his credit didn't start out very good because of his position in the band. Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, he was notorious for not being able to play his bass very well when Motley Crue started because he was a guitarist playing bass. But to his credit, he learned how to play the instrument well enough uh to be to be a good enough foundation for the rest of the band.
Mm. Yeah, I come on their early albums, Nicky Six sucked. He got
Hmm.
better. He got way better. But oh man, he was bad.
Yeah. And again, that was because he was a guitarist playing bass, and like he probably didn't have the right guidance when it came to
Uh,
the technique, which is understandable. Like you're not like in the 80s and the 70s and 80s, you probably that's probably the last thing you're thinking about is like technique. If you were originally a guitarist and you ended up playing bass, like it happens. But it's really awesome to see a band like Greta Van Fleet improve with their sound and their techniques and everything. Like and this again, I was guilty of comparing their last album to Battle at Garden's Gate. I just loved hearing Sam Kiska's bass really, truly truly get like groovier. And I'm not saying he didn't do a good job on the first album. He did great. He did. I even loved how he sounded on From the Fires. I like just hearing that. Like I think he played a precision bass. Just that precision bass tone. Like it sounds like it blends in perfectly with the sound. And same with the. And it probably also had to do with the sound of their first album, in which the bass had to sound that way. But this album really, really, really complements the bass along with other instruments equally. Like not space wise, but just production wise and
mm,
performance wise too. Performance wise, they really took more liberties with how each instrument should sound, but they also thought of how can how can we sound good, because again, I think a band shines more when it thinks about how can the instrument make the music sound good rather than how can the music make the instrument sound good. I think as a band and as a musician, you have to think of it like that. How can you make the music sound good, not the other way around?
mm. Yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme here.
Yeah. And that's my one piece of advice for anyone's trying to start a band or just putting out music. How are you going to make the music sound good? And I think this band really, like, after their first album, which I know it sounds like we're ripping on it, but again, it's just more of a it's more of you know how the compare and contrast with their first album and their second album. Each album's going to have its different individual sound, and I feel like they went back to the lab and saw, hey, what did we do on this? What was done on this album? What was done right, but also what was done wrong, and how can we learn from what was done wrong? what can we do differently but keep all of the positive elements that we incorporated from the first album. I feel like that's what they thought of. Like, how can we open up to a more atmospheric sound to the music?
Mhm.
And I de- I I definitely wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Like I will admit when I was because I haven't really since the pandemic I haven't taken much time to listen to certain bands like Greta Van Fleet because Greta Van Fleet hasn't released anything since Anthem of the Peaceful Army, which was about almost 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
And
fall of 2018.
yeah, because right after that album came out, I turned 21,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I like I was like, I haven't listened to Greta Van Fleet. I don't know if I really want to go back to listening to them again. And then I follow them on social media, and I went back. I started listening to Heat Above. I'm like, wow, this is good. I really like this. Is going to be on their new album. I really hope the rest of the album sounds like this, and and it ended up sounding a lot like it. It ended up sounding like Heat Above. Well, not exactly like Heat Above, but in the same quality and the same production aspect, and it appreciated the soundscape that was given to them. And I was like, holy crap, I am so impressed with their work. I like I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us these next upcoming years. Like what are they going to become after this album? Are they going to have a more folkier approach? Are they going to have an electronic approach? Nick Riccardi asks, Heat Above. What do you mean? Oh, is he going to have a pun?
I am 100% certain it's going to be a pun.
Oh,
Oh, there it is.
of course. Oh, oh man. I
Lou, I can't even begin to tell you. Every day I am bombarded by my friends going, um, uh, no one wins, or uh, blood will spill, or uh, or just a good old classic scream. Uh,
uh, this is Nick. This is all I have to say to your pun.
Too bad that didn't kill me.
Uh, that's all I gotta say to your pun. Um, I I don't want anyone to take away that I didn't like Greta Van Fleet's first album. I didn't like any of their earlier record. No, I'm just pointing out like they had some great stuff, great material on their first album. They had some great material when they started out. But when it came when it comes down to it, like I've noticed the improvements that they made in this album compared to what they've done on their first album, which I think it makes them shine more. It makes them realize, hey, we're listening to the fans and we're taking our sound to the next level. And I think each band should really learn from this or learn from stuff like this.
oh yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, that had to be what they have done, or what they had done. You know, I mean, I heard that the album was influenced from their travels around the world,
Mm,
uh, and like all like the dark and depressing crap they'd seen, um, in countries that I guess are less fortunate than whatever
then,
America is, which
mm,
I don't know. I'm starting to go a little crazy living here, but I imagine they probably saw some pretty bad crap out on the road, So I could definitely see that's where the dark and atmospheric stuff comes in. Uh but um they definitely had to have returned to the drawing board or just evolved. I mean, again, like I was waiting for them to evolve, and they did it, and I'm pleasantly happy, with
yeah,
what they've managed to do. Uh it's really good. It's really
yeah, I
good.
agree. Um,
Oh,
um,
yeah. I feel like I don't know if you saw this or not, but yeah, I was gonna say this before we moved on, but earlier today I accidentally stabbed myself with a screwdriver because I was
oh
trying to
shoot.
open a um uh I got a little adapter for my second headphone mix in my audio interface. So I was trying to
Mhm.
open it and I stabbed through it with a screwdriver and I got my hand a little bit. And my buddy went blood will spill because I started bleeding.
Did no one win?
No, well, I don't know. My hand didn't win. He won.
I
He
guess
got in
yeah.
a good pun.
I
And
hope you didn't
sorry,
stain
I felt like
freedom.
that was important to say.
Nah, you're good with the puns. I'm gonna get to the final thoughts now. Do you have any final thoughts?
um, I would just, I would just say, definitely listen to the album. Go into it with an open mind. No matter who you are coming into it. If you don't like rock at all, give it a listen. You know,
Mm.
it's different. Um, if you dismiss them as Led Zeppelin, listen to it and be surprised. And if you're sad that they're not doing the whole Led Zeppelin thing anymore, I don't know what to tell you. Um, listen to it anyway and see if you
Yeah.
like
If you're looking for something that sounds like Led Zeppelin, just listen to Led Zeppelin. Or better yet,
it.
I heard this band called Wolf Mother. I forget what that's
Oh,
called.
they're pretty cool.
I actually haven't listened to them. I'll take some time out of my I'll take some time out and listen to them.
They're cool. Listen to them.
Yeah. Um quite honestly, I'd have to agree with you on that. Like I this is a nice change of pace. Like I'm not gonna get all like preachy boomer and all that and say like, they're this is better than most of the crap that we hear on the radio. Like and just try to like use it as an excuse to rip on rap music and modern music of today that doesn't sound like say music of the 90s or the late 80s and MTV, which again, like not everyone's going to be a fan of. I'm not a big fan of them. Um but if you really want to expand your horizons and you've never really listened to rock music or never listened to, you're not a big music listener, you only listen to a couple songs, I would definitely recommend Greta Van Fleet. If you want a nice change of pace, you want some real energy, some true pure energy from like a band, definitely listen to Greta Van Fleet and definitely check out their new album. Just remember, Battle at Gardens Gate is the name of the album, and that's just the new that's you can listen to it anywhere on Apple Music, Spotify. Um, there might be some other sources like Google Play and Amazon
YouTube.
Music. I believe you can listen to them. Yeah, but definitely give them a listen. There's definitely a lot you could be missing out. Nick Riccardi said this. I think we need more bands like Greta Van Fleet nowadays. To be honest, yeah, I can see what you mean. I again, I'm not against bands sounding a certain way. Like I've said this before. I'm not a huge fan of pop punk. Am I against pop punk? Am I against it being played on the radio? Do I think it's bad? Would I be against listening to it or playing it? No, but um, it's nice to see other varieties of rock music suddenly start coming up and start having that signature sound again. And Greta Van Fleet is another example of that. And honestly, more power to them. But, guys, I hope you enjoyed this stream. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. Um, if you want to see updates regarding the podcast or regarding the channel, just look back to Instagram at LA Perez Works. If you want to see just more stuff regarding it, just keep in mind of that. Um, don't forget to follow Mason's Instagrams at Basin Mel and his music account where he does covers at Muasonic. And that's about it, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend and a good rest of your week. As always, stay tuned.